Happy end of the 2019 college football season for the Longhorns. We are bringing in our Roger Wallace from the site of that finale, the Alamo Dome, ahead of the Alamo Bowl game against Utah. Raj, I was down there. Once Texas arrived, I left, you took over. So I'll start it out with you giving me your thoughts. What are you thinking ahead of this game? What's the vibe for UT?
Well, Chris, as you know, I think it's kind of all over the map because of the odd bowl season, if you will, they had with the coaching changes, the addition of two coordinators in the last couple of weeks. So in some respects, Tom Herman, a lot of the stuff he's talking about is the future, yet they've got one more game against a really good Utah team, and the players have constantly been asked, how do you handle all the turmoil that's going on, the disappointment of 7-5, and now you've got to play a Utah team. So my best answer for that is I have no idea what to expect tonight. Although Tom Herman has a great bowl record, he only has 3 as a head coach, but he has won them all. 2 of them are New Year's Six. One was the upset over Florida State when he was at Houston. Of course, Chris, you were in Texas at the Texas Bowl. I think that was the biggest shocker. What they did to Missouri 2 years ago, with all the momentum Missouri had and all the issues that was going on with Texas and the players that weren't playing for one reason and to another. So for me to sit here and think I know what's going to happen tonight, I think would be silly, because these bowl games, they take on a life of their own when teams haven't played for nearly a month.
Yeah, one of the storylines that a lot of the reporters that I was there with, you're there with, talking about was the motivation level for Utah, because this is a really similar situation to what Texas was facing last year against Georgia, where both Georgia and Utah had hopes of making the playoffs. They were a conference championship game win away from being in the playoffs. They don't get there, they get beat, and then they end up in a game that they don't really want to be playing in. Now, Texas, you could question their motivation as well. Last year, they're playing in the Sugar Bowl. They have a shot at 10 wins. This year, not quite the same. The Alamo Bowl isn't one of those New Year's Six bowl games. Doesn't have the same level of prestige as something like the Sugar Bowl has. They're not going for 10 wins, which is kind of the benchmark for a really good year in college football. They're just trying to salvage an otherwise pretty forgettable season. But you mentioned Tom Herman's record as a head coach in bowl games, the 2 New Year's Six bowl wins, and then the Texas Bowl. He didn't coach in the Las Vegas Bowl whenever he left Houston to take over at Texas. But how about Kyle Whittingham? I mean, that guy, 11-2 and in bowl games. What he's been able to do with the Utes and the level of consistency that they always show in the postseason is pretty unrivaled across the country.
Yeah, it's a great record, and you're right. And one of the two was last year when they lost to Northwestern. So it was 11-1 before last year. But I think the difference between Utah and Georgia is, let's be honest, Georgia, SEC, had been in a playoff before. They thought they were going to win that championship game. So I think they had a much different mindset than Utah, who nobody expected on September 1st that Utah might be playing for a spot in the playoffs. So I think a little different mindset between a Georgia team and a Utah team, and I think that's just one of those chip on their shoulder teams, not the blue bloods, not the 5 stars. So I think they take on that personality of Kyle Whittingham, and so I think they will be ready to play. Their last game was not good, and all the things they do well, they didn't do well. They couldn't stop the run against Oregon, best rush defense in the country, and they couldn't run the ball. One of the best running backs in the nation in Zach Moss. So we'll see if Texas can take any page out of the Oregon book tonight to try to do to Utah what Oregon did in the Pac-12 championship game.
You know, Raj, you bring up a great point. That's something that I was talking about with some of the other reporters down there when I was in San Antonio, is you're right. This is kind of Utah's MO. This is more their speed, playing in an Alamo Bowl type game. They're not used to the New Year's Sixes. Kyle Whittingham's taken them to a Sugar Bowl before, and then, of course, when Alex Smith, their honorary captain, alongside Colt McCoy for Texas today, was there, had that undefeated season, and they were kind of the original BCS busters. But this is more their speed, what they're used to playing. And so I agree. I think this isn't going to be one where they're looking at what could have been, and they're going to just come in and approach this with like they would any other game, which is bad news for Texas. And this was something that what you talk about them coming off such a poor performance in that Pac-12 championship game is for the good news for the Texas defense, and I said this in some of my stories when I was down there over the weekend, I mean, they were shut out in the first half against Oregon, and then they put up 0 net yards in the fourth quarter. Which Utah is going to show up? Is it going to be what they just put on the field, just put on tape in that last game that they played, or is it going to be what we saw from them for most of the regular season outside of that loss to USC? It's kind of a toss-up what they're going to be. They've got their quarterback. They've got Zach Moss. They're just missing Jalen Johnson, I believe it is, the quarterback or cornerback junior who's sitting out the game to get ready for the NFL draft. And they're without two safeties, one a starter, one a backup because of injury. But otherwise, and that's all on the defensive side of the ball, but offensively, like what are you going to get? What are you expecting?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think you're going to get a heavy dose of Tyler Huntley and Zach Moss. And Huntley's numbers are pretty amazing, Chris, when you think about he's number 2 in all of college football, number 1, I believe, in FBS in completion percentage. But he also averages over 14 yards per completion. In other words, it's not a dink and dunk offense. Now, he doesn't throw for 5,000 yards because they've got the great running game, but he is very dangerous throwing the ball, and he'll push it downfield. They've got a very productive tight end position, and then you've got the X factor in Moss, who needs 2 touchdowns to break their single-season record for most touchdowns. So I think it's going to be also you're looking at a team that lost their defensive coordinator during their bowl preparations. Now Craig Niver has to take over the defense from Todd Orlando, as well as his other coaching duties. So again, it all to me ends up to be one big giant question mark about what happens. But then again, bowl games are so odd, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. To me, they're one of the oddest things in all of sports, where you have to wait sometimes as much as a month to play your next game, and in a lot of cases it's basically overblown exhibition game. So to me, that's why we go through these conversations about, are they motivated, why aren't guys playing, what are they playing for? How many times do we talk about that in college basketball at the end of the season? Maybe Texas in the NIT or something like that, where obviously it turned out pretty well, but to me that's the big head scratcher. And now with the college football playoff, Chris, it's even more diminished because, let's be honest, the 2 biggest games were last Saturday.
Yeah.
Now it's Tuesday, and we're having to turn it all over again before January 13th. So it's the best regular season, and it's the oddest postseason in all of sports to me.
Yeah, this year with the extra early semifinal in the college football playoffs makes things even more funky. And then New Year's Day, which is supposed to be the day everybody loves, is kind of an afterthought, but it's not, because you still have the Sugar Bowl and the Rose Bowl, and that's the whole reason why you don't have the semifinals on that day. College football is a weird sport. But going back to this game, let's flip sides and talk about that Utah defense that Texas is going against. Longhorns are going to be as healthy as they've been maybe all season long. Still no Jordan Whittington, but you're going to have Keontae Ingram, who's no longer banged up, dealing with injuries kind of throughout the season. You've got Colin Johnson, who is fully expecting to play. I'd be pretty shocked if he didn't at this point. Good to go from that hamstring. Didn't want to put a specific number on how the percentage health he was, but it sounds like he's good to go. He looked good in practice from what we were able to see. But that Utah defense, the best in the country. We mentioned they're going to be without 3 guys in the secondary, but this is a tough test for the Longhorns, maybe the toughest all season, and that includes going against teams like Oklahoma with a better defense, even though can't talk about them too much. LSU didn't have a world-beating defense, but this Utah defense seems to be the best that they will go up against all season long.
Yeah, and I think you said it with the guys that aren't in the secondary. Justin Blackmon's are leading with 4 interceptions. Jalen Johnson's not playing. The simple math to me is you're going to attack the secondary first with Sam Ehlinger. You've got Colin Johnson back, the big target. Obviously, Devin Duvernay's had an outstanding year, and then see if you can gash him in the run game, but basically use that pass to set up the run with Sam Ehlinger. And also, whenever Texas is in what is perceived going to be kind of a grinded-out game, you always think about Ehlinger in the run game a little more. And even Bradley and I, one of the best defensive ends in the country, said we're not used to a guy like Ehlinger running the football from the quarterback position. So we'll see. There's no next week, so Sam can can play the way he loves to play and go all out. So I think they're going to try to attack him downfield and see if they can exploit some backups in the secondary. We got Bevo, Chris. You want to take a shot? Remember last year, tomorrow night, Chris, with Bevo?
Oh, how could I forget?
No live mascots for Utah, so Bevo's chilling.
Let me ask you this, Raj. What exactly is a Ute?
See, you're putting me on the spot, but I think it has to do with the Native American in that part of the country.
Really?
So I believe so.
I had no idea.
But, everyone's Googling right now and yelling at me that I'm wrong, but I believe that's the origin of that. You got the computer right there. Help me out.
Okay. All right. Let's. I'm just worried if I look up Utah Ute, I'm just going to get the football team. But let's see how quick I can do this.
Yeah.
Well, here while we're going down this little rabbit hole, I'm seeing obviously Utah plays at Rice-Eccles Stadium.
Thanks a lot, by the way.
That's a place that you were low-key familiar with because of the Salt Lake City Olympics that you covered out there.
Wow, you're really taking a detour here. Yeah. 2002 Olympics in Salt Lake City. I'm going to pull a line out from everybody that talks about the New Year. Can't believe it was 17 years ago. 18 years ago in February. That was the start of the Patriots dynasty, by the way. But again, we continue to veer off. Have you found an answer as we filibuster here?
Yeah, that's all I was doing. I was just trying to buy some time.
You mentioned what Texas has to play for. I will say, Chris, and you and I, part of what a bowl game does is it kind of creates that offseason noise. Last year, obviously, it created the positive buzz with the win over Georgia. If they lose tonight, 7-6, spring practice will be different because you have the new coordinator. So I think that buys Tom Herman a diversion from the noise. But obviously, 7-6 is a big step back from what was expected and what they built last year. So to me, that's what the motivation is for the program. You get to 8-5, you beat a top 12 team. The noise changes a little bit, and then you've got the new coaches, a new recruiting class to talk about. They might hit on a couple of defensive recruits in February because of Chris Ash and maybe the way he plays. They're still trying to beef up the defensive line in recruiting, so all that could create some positive noise. But if it's coming off 7-6 again, that's where a little bit of the grumbling starts again, and you start looking at big picture questions.
I will update you, folks who are watching, and you as well, Roger. According to Wikipedia, Ute people are Native Americans of the Ute tribe and culture and are among the Great Basin classification of indigenous people. You called it, Raj. Great job. What you're talking about with the bowl game.
You made my day right there. I can sleep easy sometime tonight.
A well-rounded man. How overblown do you think momentum after a bowl win is? Because clearly Texas, if they had any momentum, they squandered it.
Huge.
I think it's a talking point that the coaches and players and we in the media like to mention leading up to the game and maybe a day or two after. But signing day, or what was signing day, is now a month and a half away, a month away. The season is, 9 months away. I don't think what happens here really carries over that much into the 2020 season.
Nope. 100%. Here's what I'll look at a couple of momentum examples. Momentum after Texas won the Rose Bowl against Michigan. Momentum was great. They had Vince Young at quarterback.
Yeah.
What happened in the Rose Bowl 10 years ago, January 7th, Mac Brown admits that was a crusher. What happened against Alabama, and I think that did affect the program. But you look at any other bowl situation, and there's really no correlation. And the best one recently is last year to this year. Now maybe what they did against Missouri did give them a little momentum. They had the winning record. They could kind of hang their hat on that, and then still surprise a little people. But you're right, Chris. And now with the transfer portal and so many new faces. faces. It's not just recruiting classes. It's who's going to get. Is Lincoln Riley, if he's still coaching OU, is he going to get another grad transfer, or is he going to finally, go with a young quarterback like Spencer Rattler or Tanner Mordecai, or is he going to have a fourth consecutive Heisman finalist? To me, that's more about momentum than what happens in a bowl game. So I put very little stock in what happens tonight and what happens next year when the Longhorns open the season and week 2 have to go to Baton Rouge.
Alrighty, that's I think that's as good a note to end on. Just saying that this game is really, how important is it in the grand scheme of things? But it's just a little perspective for fans who
it's as important as you make it.
Exactly. You can make whatever you want out of this. If you want to be happy or see some positives, you can. If you want to be mad and burn it all down, I'm sure you'll be able to find reasons to do that as well. Kickoff is at 6:30 tonight from San Antonio in the Alamo Dome. It is Texas' 4th appearance in the Alamo Bowl, taking on number 11 ranked Utah, just their 2nd meeting all time. And you're going to be on the radio call for it, Raj, and I'll be back here watching on TV.
Yeah, we'll have shots on KXAN, 4:30, 5, 6 o'clock, and then, of course, I'll head up to the booth and close down another season with Craig Way and Quan Cosby.
All right, sounds good, Raj. Thanks for your time. Have a good call. Thank you, folks, for watching, and have a good New Year. Enjoy the game.